Hi, Lou. This is Sam Benedict, Inspector Delgado.
Hi.
How are you? I don't need a lawyer, Lou.
Why don't you let me decide that, Inspector?
All right, decided. The suspect resisted arrest. He thought he could tear me apart, and he got a skull fracture trying to do it. I didn't mean to kill him. I don't want to kill any human being. I don't know a police officer who does. It's all there in my report. Do I need a lawyer to explain how I was performing my duty?
You may need a lawyer to prove you were performing it.
Yes? Sam, Charlie Daniels.
Hello, Charlie. You're up late.
The district attorney's man? Yeah.
Well, Charlie, this is an 836A as I see it. Well, the racing boy resisted arrest. There was a struggle. He fell. He hit his head. Inspector Delgado is well within Section 196. I presume Lieutenant Raddick will go ahead with the usual interdepartmental investigation. I presume he'll call you if any special action is necessary. Is that right? I'm sorry, Charlie. I can't allow you to question Inspector Delgado at this time.
Well?
Harold Rayson's filing a complaint.
Harold W. Rayson? Is that his father?
Was his father.
The oil and the airlines. Plenty of money. Plenty of power.
And plenty of influence. And his son's lying in the morgue right now.
Lute, I didn't mean to...
Tell him he's your lawyer.
His complaint's gonna say you haven't given a true picture of what happened.
He can say anything he wants to.
So can you, Inspector.
That's exactly what happened. The way it happened. And nobody can change the truth.
Excuse me. Go on, Inspector.
I wouldn't have been a very good policeman if I hadn't stopped to question them.
You say that when you and Inspector Shatley first approached the two suspects, the racing boy was immediately hostile.
Boy, let me explain. That boy was 6'2" and weighed 190 pounds.
What did he do that was so hostile, Inspector?
He called me Fuzz. I don't take that from anybody.
What do you mean you don't take that? Do you ask for an apology, make an arrest? What?
I mean there had been a number of strong arms in that particular neighborhood. Those two kids were loitering in the alley, acting suspiciously. We had reasonable cause to stop, to identify ourselves as police officers, and to question them.
You still haven't answered my question, Inspector.
Yes, I did. He can get on a man's nerves.
So can you.
I asked you, what do you mean you don't take that? A police officer takes a lot of things. Exactly what don't you take, Inspector?
I don't take hazing, insults to the star, to the department.
Exactly how don't you take it?
In this case, I warned him.
Warned or threatened?
All right, I threatened him. That's how you handle these punks.
Lawrence Rayson was no punk.
He looked like a punk. He talked like a punk. He acted like a punk.
It seems to me you made up your mind in one big fat hurry.
I'm paid to make up my mind. I'm a police officer. In situations like this, my mind is made up for me. It's been made up for 20 years. 20 aching years. Less than a week ago, Friday night, it was right in that same alley. In that same alley, two mainliners. You heard about this? Two mainliners held up an old man with nothing in his pockets but car fare. 38 cents. And when they saw this was nowhere near enough to buy a fix, they smashed him to pieces. They tore his face. They broke his hip. And they kicked him to death's door. That's what happened in that same alley last Friday, less than a week ago. That's what makes up my mind for me. You hear?
Yeah, I hear you. So does everyone else down the hall. Here, buy yourself a smoke. Hank, come on.
Ambler, Stinson, and Ambler are handling the racing matter. Frank Ambler's meeting with the district attorney and Charlie Daniels at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Charlie Daniels will have a warrant out for Delgado's arrest before noon.
Or sooner. There's a lot of pressure on this one, Sam.
What do you think of him?
I don't think he'd lie if somebody was cutting his leg off. What do you think?
I think he's a weary, overworked man. Mrs. Delgado?
Yes?
I'm Sam Benedict. I'll be representing your husband in this matter. Sit down. This is Hank Taylor, my assistant.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Are they going to keep him in there all night?
No, just a few minutes. Mrs. Delgado, I make it a practice in these matters to tell all concerned parties exactly where we stand. Your husband's going to be accused of doing wrong, formally and informally. Because he's a policeman, the police department and the district attorney's office will take a very stern attitude. There will be enormous pressure from newspapers. Now, you can help your husband, and you can help his case by avoiding all contact with those newspaper people downstairs. Is that clear?
Yes, I want to help. I want to do everything.
I'm sure you do. Right now, I'd like you to talk to Mr. Tabor for a few minutes.
All right.
Let's go get some coffee.
You're not through with him?
I want to talk to him alone.
Now what?
One question. You and me alone. No one else.
Okay.
Is it possible what you felt about the strong arms in the neighborhood, that old man that nearly got kicked to death? Is it possible that you converted all that emotion into brutality directed at the racing boy?
Dumb and brutal, huh? That's me.
It could be.
Well, it isn't.
What is it?
Look, I don't care who you are or what you represent. Don't ask me about brutality, you alone or with anybody else.
Well, the district attorney will ask you, and the newspapers will ask you, and so will half a dozen organizations from one end of San Francisco to the other. Not to mention your brother officers. Lieutenant Raddick has already made it implicitly clear you're going on the griddle, and you're going to fry. If you think I'm tough, wait till they hit you. Now look at me. Look at me! I'm asking you for the last time. Is this a case of police brutality?
No.
No ifs, buts, or reservations?
There are no microphotographs or chemical stain tests to show how a man's mind works. You're just gonna have to take my word for it.
What's your first name?
Tony.
I met your wife. She's waiting outside. You better tell her chances are you'll be taken into custody tomorrow. God help you if you're lying to me.
Sam, the other suspect, the one who was with young Rayson, has been identified as Ralph Towner. They're picking him up now.
Towner?
Yeah, went to school with Rayson.
I'd like to see Mr. Towner, Mike.
After he's booked.
I'll bet you Charlie Daniels gets to see him before he's booked.
We've known each other a long time, Sam, but that don't make any difference here. You get no special attention, Delgado gets no special attention. Knowing you or knowing him doesn't change my job any.
Yours or mine, Mike. I'm entitled to see, I want to see, all of Inspector Delgano's personnel records, his transfers, his probe service ratings, the works.
I may have to get an okay from the captain on that.
If you don't, I will.
He must be half out of his mind. They have to be so tough on him, Mr. Tabor.
Well, they have to do what they have to do, Mrs. Delgado.
He should have been home 6 hours ago. He left the house at 7 o'clock yesterday morning. That's almost 21 hours. I hate it when he doesn't get his rest. He gets so tense.
Do you have any children, Mrs. Delgado?
No. We've just never had children, Mr. Tabor. Maybe if we had, he'd stay home more. No, that's not true. He's a dedicated man, and he works at his job.
Do you think he works too much at his job?
Oh, no. Look, it wouldn't make any difference whether I thought so or not. He'd do it anyway. You're trying to get an impression of him through me. Well, we've been married for a long time, and we're just about as good or as bad as the average couple. Sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes it's not so wonderful. I was thinking tonight about all the men we know, Tony and me, police officers or My brother, who sells appliances, or my sister's husband, who runs a drugstore, or my dad. God love him. He feeds pigeons and squirrels and plays checkers. And there's not one of them, not one, that puts as much into his work as Tony does. Now, this had to happen. It was bound to, I guess.
Why?
Last month, he studied night after night for the lieutenant's examinations. That plus working 10 to 14 hours a day.
Why such long hours, Mrs. Delgado?
He says, why not such long hours? The last thing one thinks about are the hours. That's what he says.
What do you say?
I say I'm sick and tired of it. And I'm mad. What do they want for $90.96 a year with a 3 weeks vacation? He doesn't even take any.
Shut up, Jerry.
Are you all right?
I'm fine. Finish your coffee?
Yes.
We're going home. Suppose I'll be seeing a lot more of you.
I suppose you will, Inspector.
Excuse me.
Inspector, may I ask you a question?
Go ahead, everybody else is.
Mrs. Delgado told me you took the lieutenant's exam last month. Is the list out yet?
It came out yesterday afternoon, just before I went on duty. I wasn't on it. Anything else?
No, nothing else. Good night, Mrs. Delgado.
Good night.
So long.
That'll be all for now, thank you. You're in custody as of now, Delgado. I want your star, your gun, your cuffs, and your call box key right here. You're being arraigned on the complaint of the district attorney. You get a preliminary hearing as fast as it can be set. What happens there will determine whether or not you go up before the police commission. You know the route.
Yep.
Okay, come and get him.
May we talk a minute, Lieutenant?
Go ahead.
Well, maybe I do need a lawyer.
This is your position right now, Inspector. From now on, you don't have to make a statement to the lieutenant here, the district attorney, or anybody else. You don't even have to testify. You can rely on the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, go on.
If you do utilize the Fifth Amendment, you end your career as a police officer.
I know about that.
Nevertheless, I want to make it perfectly clear to you that the moment you took your badge and your oath, you voluntarily waived your constitutional right not to testify against yourself. As a police officer of the city, you're required to answer any and all questions directed to you by your superior officers. As an ordinary citizen, you can refuse to answer any questions put to you that might incriminate you or place you in jeopardy. Is that clear?
Yeah, sure.
The prosecution would be at a distinct disadvantage if you chose to remain silent. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you'd be at a distinct disadvantage if you chose to subject yourself to the rules and procedures of the police commission. What you have to consider is how you best can defend yourself.
And that comes down to, do I still want to be a police officer or not?
Well?
Well, you heard my lawyer advise me to think about it. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Hello, Charlie.
Good morning, Sam.
I see you got a real good press with this.
Well, people have a right to know about policemen beating suspects over the head.
Now, wait a minute.
That's a lot! How dare you!
Take it easy, Mrs. Delgado.
Who is this awful man? Who is he?
This is Mr. Daniels of the DA's office.
How dare you?
I apologize, Mr. Delgado. Mr. Benedict might have let me know who you were.
Well, I know who you are and what kind you are.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Come on, fellas, will you get out of here? Go. It's all right.
I'm getting as bad as Tony, huh?
Judgment and sentence of the court is that you serve 5 days, consecutive Sundays beginning next Sunday, that's all.
That'll look pretty in the papers.
The people also have a right to know that a policeman's wife can become indignant when a husband is accused of a crime when all he was doing was carrying out his duties and obligations as a police officer.
You might explain to that woman that the district attorney can't ignore the complaints that come across his desk.
I can also explain to her that he can avoid reporters if he wants to.
Your Honor, may I call line number 7 now? Anthony H. Delgado.
Anthony H. Delgado, is that your true name?
Yes?
Arraign the defendant.
Anthony H. Delgado, you have been charged with the crime of murder, violation of Section 187 California Penal Code. In that on or about October 22nd last, you did willfully and with malice aforethought murder one Lawrence W. Rayson. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Very well. What day for preliminary hearing?
October 25th, Your Honor.
Agreeable, Mr. Benedict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Agreeable, Your Honor.
10 o'clock in the morning. The defendant is charged with murder. There can be no bail in this case. All right, that's all.
Take it easy.
Would you?
334 and 35. Theodore Reel, Marvin Reel, and James Reel.
Hey, boss, how do you like it? How does it feel to get locked up? How do you like the birdcage, huh?
I could tear the skin off his face with my fingernails.
Your personal misery isn't going to help Tony. It's not going to improve his morale. It's not going to bolster his confidence. Show him you love him, Mrs. Delgado. They haven't been able to find harder armor than love and devotion.
I heard you try to beat up the deputy district attorney.
I love you.
Don't.
I'm trying not to.
Jerry, don't do that. I've been around jails for 20 years. They don't bother me at all. Jerry, don't do it. Jerry, I want you to go.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right. I came to cheer you up.
Well, it's good to see you.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to talk to them.
Oh, but Tony.
Don't screw your face up. I can't take it, Jerry.
I know it. I know it.
I don't mean to sound hard.
God knows what you've been going through. But I should have a good crime myself. Yeah, me. Spend my life pulling punks off the street, putting them behind bars because I don't believe that they should have the right to go to baseball games, have a glass of beer, or anything else, just because they broke the law. Okay, so I'm behind bars now.
Don't testify, Tony. Don't let them make you lose your temper.
I've got to testify.
You don't. I don't care about the laws. I care about you.
Jerry, I'm a policeman. I'm going to stay a policeman, unless I'm sick or crazy or something like that. I've got nothing to hide.
Give yourself a chance, Tony, please.
The people call Ralph A. Towner.
Ralph A. Towner?
Yes. Do you recognize him?
Raise your right hand.
That's the punk who was with racing.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name, occupation, and address.
Ralph A. Towner, a college student, 845 Logard Street.
Did you know the deceased, Lawrence W. Rayson?
Yes, sir. He was a fraternity brother of mine.
Do you recall anything that happened on the evening of October the 22nd last involving Lawrence W. Rayson and yourself?
Yes, sir, I do.
Kindly state what took place.
Well, sir, we were collecting cartons.
For what purpose?
We contribute them to the Veterans Hospital. That's the school charity project for this year.
Go on.
Well, Larry and I decided to look for these cartons behind some stores over in town, and we went into an alley off Fremont. Two men showed up. They said they were police officers, and that they were going to teach us a lesson.
Is that all they said?
That's all. The next thing, one of them hit Larry, and I ran.
In what direction?
Down the alley. I ducked around a corner and made it over a fence into a courtyard behind one of the stores. I waited for Larry, but he didn't show up. I heard him yelling. I climbed onto a trash bin and looked over the fence. I saw him with one of these men over by the schoolyard.
Describe what you saw take place, if anything.
This man knocked Larry down, and he hit him in the back of the head with the butt of his gun.
How many times did he hit him with the butt of the gun?
I object. He may testify the deceased was struck, but...
Sustained.
Did he hit him more than once?
Must have been 3 or 4 times. I didn't count.
Would you recognize the man that you say hit him in the back of the head with the butt of the gun?
Yes, sir.
Do you see him in this room?
Yes, I do. He's sitting at the defense table.
The witness will restrain himself.
You're indicating the defendant, Anthony H. Delgado. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now look very closely, Mr. Towner. Is there any doubt in your mind that the man at the defense table is the man that you saw engaged in a struggle with Lawrence Rayson on the evening of October the 22nd last?
No, sir. No doubt whatsoever.
I didn't take out the gun. I didn't.
Now, I want you to look around the room again. Tell me if you recognize anyone else involved in that incident of the evening of October the 22nd last.
Yes, the other man. The one that was chasing me.
Would you point him out?
That's him over there.
You're indicating the gentleman sitting on the aisle seat of the second row of the spectator section?
Yes, sir.
And where was this gentleman on the night that you say you saw the struggle between Lawrence Rayson and the defendant?
I believe he went back to Fremont Avenue to see if he could catch me coming around the front.
That's all. Your witness.
I did not use my gun. I did not hit him. Your Honor, can we have a moment?
You may, Mr. Benedict.
Let me have that report.
What page is it?
It's right in the front page.
Young Rayson tried to climb the fence into the schoolyard. You pulled him back. He knocked you down. He started kicking you, so you grabbed his foot and threw him over backwards, and that's when he hit his head.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's exactly the way it happened.
Mr. Towner, you understand my job is to get the truth. This is not a game.
Yes, sir.
Is there nothing in your testimony that you would like to change in any way?
No, sir.
You're absolutely certain you saw Inspector Delgado strike your friend with the butt of his pistol?
Several times.
You heard the coroner testify that death resulted from a single blow to the back of the head.
I only know what I saw.
Which of you addressed Inspector Delgado as Fuzz?
Fuzz?
Fuzz, a disrespectful term to describe a police officer.
No one used that word to my recollection.
After you saw the incident you described in your testimony, what did you do then?
I went home.
You didn't stop anywhere?
No, I wanted to get home as soon as possible. I wanted to tell my dad.
And did you tell your dad what happened?
Nobody was home, so I called Larry's dad.
What'd you tell Larry's father exactly?
What I just told all of you.
If I were to call Larry's father to the stand, would he back you up on that?
I object. The question calls for a conclusion.
I withdraw the question, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intimidate you.
What's he doing? Trying to win friends?
He's trying to get the charges against you dropped.
The punk's lying.
Let him lie.
Mr. Towner, you gave your occupation as a college student. Are you by any chance on a scholarship?
No, I'm not.
You have any kind of a job that would pay your tuition or any of the costs of your education?
No, sir, I don't. My father feels I should spend all my time studying. At least as much time as possible. And he's willing to provide the funds.
What kind of grades do you get?
I've always been a straight A student.
Very commendable. No more questions. But the defense reserves the right to recall this witness at a later time.
You may leave the stand, but you're not excused from subpoena and must remain in attendance at this hearing.
Yes, sir.
Is that the best you can do? He's lying. He's lying. The whole thing is a lie.
Take it easy, Tony. I want to see what else they intend to throw at you.
Well, Mr. Daniels, have you anything further?
No, Your Honor. The people rest.
The defense calls Inspector Joseph Shatley.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and occupation.
Joseph H. Shatley, police officer, City of San Francisco.
How long have you been so employed?
14 years.
To what detail are you assigned?
Narcotics?
How long have you known Inspector Delgado?
14 years.
Directing your attention to the 22nd of October last, do you recall any particular incident that occurred in an alley or Fremont Avenue at approximately 8 p.m.?
I do.
Will you describe what took place?
I was patrolling with Inspector Delgado. We were proceeding along Fremont in an easterly direction. When we came to this alley, Inspector Delgado spotted two men loitering in the alley, acting suspiciously. That particular neighborhood had been subjected to strong-arm complaints recently. We considered them suspicious.
Go on, Inspector.
We parked the car and went to investigate. Inspector Delgado approached the suspects while I covered him. He identified himself as a police officer and started to question the suspects. They made some disrespectful remarks and ran up the alley. When Inspector Delgado ordered them to stop, they refused, so we went after them. When they got to the end of the alley, they split up, going in opposite directions. Delgado went after the one who turned out to be young Rayson, and I followed the other one, Towner, there, but he got away from me.
Then what did you do?
I spent a minute or so searching through the back alley and out to the street. Then I heard Delgado calling for help, so I ran back. I found Rayson lying prone on the pavement, bleeding. He was unconscious. I observed an injury on the back portion of his head. We immediately radioed communications for an ambulance.
Did you at any time see Inspector Delgado strike the deceased?
No, sir.
Did you at any time during the incident see Inspector Delgado remove his pistol from his holster?
No, sir, I did not.
Your witness.
You say that you have been a police officer for 14 years.
Yes, sir.
Well, in the course of questioning a suspect who tries to escape, is it your duty to employ every means possible to prevent such an escape?
Well, it depends on the circumstances.
In what way?
If the crime is serious, my duty is to utilize every possible means.
Including any that might cause the death of the suspect?
Yes, sir. However, if the crime is only a misdemeanor, we stop short of anything that might cause the death of the suspect, unless it happens to be a case of self-defense.
Well, calling your attention to the evening of October the 22nd last, when you questioned those two boys, did you determine anything that might give grounds to your suspicions?
Well, they were disrespectful, trying to get us to hit them, but you can't arrest anyone for that.
Did you hit them?
No, sir.
Did Inspector Delgado hit them in your presence?
No, sir, he did not.
How long have you and Inspector Delgado been covering this particular neighborhood?
4 or 5 months, I'd say.
Well, has Inspector Delgado ever indicated to you that he was losing his patience with regard to enforcing the law in this neighborhood?
Your Honor, the question is irrelevant, immaterial, and incompetent.
On the contrary, Your Honor. The question is designed to demonstrate that Inspector Delgado has upon several occasions gone beyond the bounds of his responsibilities and duties as an officer to indulge in sadism and brutality.
Your Honor, impatience is hardly sadism and brutality. If the district attorney has evidence of such behavior on the part of the defendant, I suggest he get to it.
The question is relevant. You may answer.
May I hear the question again?
Has Inspector Delgado ever indicated to you that he was losing his patience in regard to enforcing the law in this neighborhood?
Yes, he has.
Did you ever see him lose his temper while questioning a suspect?
I suppose I have. A policeman's a human being.
We're all human beings, Inspector. The night that the death of Lawrence Rayson occurred, was Inspector Delgado in one of his angry moods?
Well, yes,
was he out to set an example once and for all to put an end to the trouble in this area?
Your Honor, that is a conclusion.
Strike the question.
But he was angry that night.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's his case.
What?
You lost your temper and jumped to the unjustified conclusion that a felony was involved, when in fact the circumstances indicated nothing more than a misdemeanor.
Let me take the stand. I'll straighten this out.
Stay right where you are.
Inspector Shatley, calling your attention to the evening of August the 11th last. Were you on duty that evening?
The 11th. Yes, sir.
Do you recall answering a summons to the home of Mrs. Franklin Dunstock on that date?
Yes, sir.
In the regular course of your duties as an officer, did you or did you not fill out an arrest report that evening?
Yes.
Was Inspector Delgado with you on that date?
Yes, sir, I believe he was.
Is that a true copy of the report?
Yes, it is.
What is it? Nothing. A couple of fresh kids pulling pranks.
What is the substance of the complaint?
Mrs. Dunstock alleges that Inspector Delgado roughed up and injured her son, Thomas, and a friend of his, a boy named Wilson.
Were you present when the incident occurred?
I was present. What happened was...
Did you see Inspector Delgado strike these two boys?
He grabbed them.
No, answer the question, Inspector.
Well, what he was trying to do
yes
was...
or no? Did Inspector Delgado strike these two boys?
Well, yes.
Hard, heavy, light, what?
I can only answer one question at a time.
Then answer. Did he or did he not cause physical injury to either of these boys?
Well, I suppose he did. What he was
was
trying...
he in an angry and vindictive mood?
He was angry.
A few moments ago, you testified you'd never observed him treating a suspect with sadism and brutality.
Well, this was a situation where two...
Your witness.
Your Honor, may I ask for a recess?
1 hour recess for lunch.
What are you letting them do to me?
Tony!
Inspector Shatley, on that previous occasion mentioned in the report, was Inspector Delgano's behavior sadistic or brutal?
No, sir.
Would you explain, please?
We were patrolling, and we saw two young men in that alley where on previous occasions we'd made arrests for possession of heroin. We identified ourselves as police officers and questioned them. Finally, when we were satisfied that they hadn't broken any law, we told them to move on. Until we threatened arrest, they refused to leave.
Thank you.
Inspector Delgano's mood was one of anger at the time, was it not?
Well, in a way, yes.
That's all.
You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you.
Any further witnesses for the people?
No, Your Honor. People rest.
Were there any more incidents where you pushed people around and a report was turned in?
Those two Weisenheimers were looking for trouble. What do you think we found after they left? They had a pal who would let the air out of our tires.
Did you report that? About letting the air out of your tires?
Of course not. We'd never hear the end of it. Let me take the stand.
Mr. Benedict,
Yes, Your Honor.
have you anything further to offer?
May I have just another moment, Your Honor?
If it's just a moment.
Thank you.
Let me take the stand. His testimony isn't going to do me any good.
You're not going to do yourself any good.
Put me on. I'll explain why I suspected a felony was involved.
Why not save it for the trial in Superior Court? Why waste it here?
The trial?
You're not going to testify until I know all the aspects of the people's case.
Yeah, well, I just can't wait.
Your Honor, Tony.
Yes, Inspector. You wish to address this court?
Your Honor, my client feels that he ought to take the witness stand in his own behalf. I ask 5 minutes recess so that I may advise him of the ramifications of the situation.
This hearing is recessed for 5 minutes.
Don't try to argue with me and don't try to talk me out of this.
Same kind of temper that got you into this situation.
You get up in that witness box, you get yourself ready to get kicked right where you live.
What are you talking
Daniels
about?
will murder you up there.
Look, are you with me or are you against me? You studied hard for the lieutenancy. You didn't make the list. You found out you didn't make the list the night the boy was killed.
You want Daniels to ask you about that? You want him to ask you if that was in your mind the night you approached Rayson in the alley?
I can't let them just wreck me.
Oh, nobody's gonna wreck you. This is a preliminary hearing. This is where we discover what the case is about, if there is a case. All right, we're discovering it.
Yeah, well, when are you going to do something about it?
Sam, look, right here. In Shatley's report on Towner's background, an incident about a football game.
Forget that. I'll go up there and I'll show them.
Shut up a minute. How about this? Wilston, Dunstock, Turner, and Rayson were arrested last month at a football game for throwing pop bottles at a police officer. What would prove that?
The interrogation card it would show in company with.
Where would that card be now?
Well, Joe can get it.
I'll see what else he can get.
Give her a smile, Tony.
Very well, Mr. Benedict. Have you advised your client?
Yes, Your Honor, I have. My client feels that he is obligated to follow the spirit, as well as the letter of the directive of the section of the police department's rules and procedures requiring him to waive his constitutional right to refuse to answer questions which may tend to incriminate him. However, I cannot permit him to expose himself to cross-examination. He may decline my advice. But first, I wish to re-examine Mr. Towner.
Call him.
Ralph A. Towner.
Mr. Towner, You are aware that you are still under oath?
Yes, sir.
Proceed, Mr. Benedict.
Mr. Towner, do you recall attending a football game on September 16th last?
September 16th?
That is correct, in the company of Thomas Dunstock and the Wilson boy.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
And did these other young men have an altercation with a police officer at that time?
Yes.
What happened?
Throwing pop bottles.
Were you and these other young men escorted to the police station and booked for battery?
Yes.
What was the outcome of that incident?
Guilty, suspended sentence.
Mr. Towner, regarding the night of August the 11th, did you go along with Dunstock and Wilson to the alley?
August 11th?
We can subpoena Wilson and Dunstock. I'm sure they can help you recall the facts.
I think I was along that night.
Are you aware that while your friends were keeping Inspectors Delgado and Shotley busy in the alley, someone slashed the tires of the police car?
They didn't slash them, they let the air out.
He knows that.
Well, Mr. Towner, did you slash the tires of the police car? Was that your job?
I object very strenuously, Your Honor. That question is immaterial, irrelevant, and incompetent.
Your Honor, these questions are designed to demonstrate the unreliability of this witness, who is a chronic police resistor. In these reports, we find the name of the witness 3 times, along with the names of Dunstock, Wilson, and Rayson. The offenses range from throwing pop bottles to luring an unsuspecting police officer into an alley and dousing him with a barrel of water. Oh, this is very amusing stuff for any fun-loving kid who calls a police officer fuzz and is so very gifted that he makes straight A's. But in order to remove any doubt from Mr. Daniels' mind about the intent of this question, I am prepared to show records of police resisting by Mr. Towner and his associates, which these young men think so funny, but is not funny at all. A young man is dead today as a direct result of one of their pranks. I intend to show that Lawrence Rayson's death was not provoked by brutality or sadism on the part of a police officer performing his duty, but by another one of these tragically comic pranks.
The objection is overruled. But before you proceed, the court will advise the witness that he may, under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, decline to answer any questions he feels may tend to incriminate him.
Oh, but Your Honor, that isn't fair. My husband can't take it. He's spent 20
I'm
years of his
sorry,
life
young
protecting
lady,
the people
but
of the
you
city,
must-
while some of the most despicable lawbreakers in the country are taking the Fifth Amendment.
Mrs. Delgado, you will please sit down.
The record will show that this outburst is not part of the testimony.
Mr. Benedict, I'm sorry.
I'm not.
Of late, the Fifth Amendment has come into a certain disrepute, a sort of guilt by association, because it has been utilized by a vast number of persons of whom the general public, for one reason or another, doesn't approve. I would like to remind the witness that the Fifth Amendment belongs to him as a sacred right. It is within his sole discretion whether he uses this privilege, and there is to be no blame or prejudice attached to him for resorting to same. That the rules and procedures set down by the police commission of the city has chosen to direct our police officers to refrain from using this privilege is a fine demonstration of good faith, but it does not obligate anyone else to make a similar demonstration. Read the question.
Well, Mr. Towner, did you slash the tires of the police car?
Suppose you didn't slash the tires. Did you let the air out of them?
I don't know. I guess I refuse to answer.
On what grounds?
The Fifth Amendment, grounds that it may tend to incriminate me.
Oh, the Fifth Amendment. On the night Lawrence Rayson was killed, were you indulging in the same type of activity?
I don't know exactly what you mean.
I think you do. Were you intending to deflate tires, throw bags, something like that? Suppose we get right to the point, Mr. Towner. The California law provides severe punishment for anyone who perjures himself. Now, I ask you...
I object to this badgering of the witness.
Mr. Benedict, this court is well able to advise the witness or any other party in this case in regard to the law.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Towner, you have testified that you saw the defendant, Anthony H. Delgado, inspector of the San Francisco Police Department, strike Lawrence H. Rayson over the head with the butt of a pistol, not once, but several times. Is that the truth?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might tend to incriminate me.
That is all.
Mr. Daniels, any further questions of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
You're excused.
Your Honor, the defense moves for a dismissal of the charge made against Inspector Delgado on the grounds that there is not sufficient evidence to support the charge.
Any argument?
None, Your Honor.
Motion is granted. Charge is dismissed. Now, Mr. Daniels, don't you think it's incumbent on your office to take some action in relation to this witness?
I'm fairly cognizant of it, Your Honor, and intend to refer the matter to the district attorney.
Very well. Court is adjourned.
That was a fine speech you almost made, Mrs. Delgado. See you. How's everything, Mike?
Just fine.